could I just welcome you all to this hybrid event. We are in the atrium at Suffolk University, and we're also running the webinar. So welcome to this event. It's run by the Anglian Coastal Local Network, which represents members in North Essex, Norfolk and Suffolk. Welcome to you in the local audience. Thank you for coming. And welcome also to the folks who are joining us from Zoom, from not only other parts of the UK, but I expect globally as well. I'm Ian Buxton. I'm Treasurer of the Anglian Coastal IET Local Network and will be your host this evening. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker tonight, Simon Hunt. Welcome, Simon. Simon's been a key player in the UK telecoms industry now for many years, both at alternative network providers like 186K, incumbent players like BT Wholesale and Openreach, and he is now head of broadband experience at Sky Broadband. We were delighted when Simon gave us a talk just before COVID lockdown on what was titled The Good, the Bad and the Ugly of UK Telecoms, which was both highly informative and very entertaining. And we're delighted that he's here tonight to provide the sequel. Simon's talk tonight is entitled For a Few Dollars More. Post-pandemic, our streets are lined with vans and people building and installing full fibre telecoms networks. Coverage is expected to reach 85% by 2025. So sticking with the theme of the famous film, Who Will Get Rich and Who Will Get Robbed in the Race to Glass. So prepare to be thoroughly entertained. Simon, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ian, and thank you to my audience. I hope to enthrall you over the next 40 minutes or so. So as Ian said, I work for Sky, and being part of a movie company gives you access to some great pictures. This is Sky Glass, which is nothing to do with my race to glass tonight. Sky Glass, it's a telly. So without much ado, let's take a look then at exploring UK full fibre broadband. Where are we and where are we going? So, as Ian said, a couple of years back, I exposed some of the warts and all of the good, bad and ugly about the last 100 years. But really, it's where are we now? As we enter difficult times around the world of this next 2 years, where do we start in truly making fibre UK? So I picked the prequel story to The Good, the Bad and the Ugly of a series of 3 spaghetti westerns from the 1960s. And the prequel to it was called For a Few Dollars More. So where are a few dollars more in the fibre world? So this is a tale of grabbing money. It is a tale of self-inflicted wounds. So maybe we haven't learned everything about the good, the bad and the ugly. It's a tale of twists and turns because there'd be no fun without twists and turns in the plot. And it's about winning. But of course, if you look at the film and go and find it on YouTube, you'll find it's got absolutely no engineering in it at all. So what I've done for us tonight is I've turned it into an engineering story. So you'll see the Bank of El Paso on the screen. So the first thing we need to do, rob the bank. So grabbing the money, self-inflicted wounds, twists and turns, and winning. We will find those answers to our story tonight. I'm going to do it with an economic and an engineering twist. And we're going to cover 3 areas. We're going to cover the build of the infrastructure. We're going to cover service innovation. And we're also going to look at one of the promises of fibre, feeling the speed. The 2022 has been a great year for feeling the speed for those that have watched Top Gun 2, Return of Maverick. But where are we really in feeling the speed and building this fibre UK? So within the bank, there is a safe. So the banks have the money. Very interestingly, a lot of that money has exited the banks and is being used to build full fibre UK. And I have to say, it's not going bad now. It is going at pace. If I look at what Ofcom have said, then currently we sit at 68% of homes being gigabit capable. but that is a mix of cable networks and of FTTP. The FTTP element is at 37%. So a large component of it is still then held by Virgin Media, but we could see that their market share must be being eroded then, or have the threat of competition to say there is a like-for-like service appearing. And really, those have been the two incumbents for many years. So Virgin Media formed out of the plethora of telecoms companies that built cable networks back in the 1990s, when in a similar era, the banks loaned lots and lots of money to go and dig up the UK and put things in the ground. So are we doing the same? To a certain extent, we are. If we look at what has happened today, we see there are 8 million homes passed by Openreach, so part of BT, but run as a completely separate entity nowadays. And their current build rate is around about 800,000 a quarter. So they're building at quite some pace around the UK. Not all in one place, but building everywhere. Because if we look back at what was BT's commitment to the UK and to the government and what would actually help the economy grow, the key was getting as many homes passed as possible in the shortest period of time. And that means trying to get to around about 80% by 2025. But we can see then, building at this rate, there is a good chance this will be achieved. So might be 2026, could be difficult times ahead of us with the economic climate, but there's a fair chance if everyone's building at that rate that we could achieve it. But if I look at Virgin Media of true fibre as opposed to cable network, it's a long way behind. It's down at the 2 million level still, and it's only building at maybe 1/8 of that rate of Openreach, or even slightly lower. It's going slower. Now, what we may see is we may see an acceleration of that. The merger of Virgin Media with O2, which actually I think from a personal perspective is a merger that was looking to happen, because you've got a great long-standing mobile company and in what became O2, and it's got its own challenges of taking an incumbent base and winding in the world of 5G. Alongside, you've got an established cable company, so that bringing together all the infrastructure, those cable companies, and put them together, and its needs to go and build full fibre UK to provide a overall service to its customer base. So there's a lot of opportunity for Virgin Media to do more. And as they go through the period of finding savings, so 1-2 years into forming the company, so they're now into the second year since that merger happened, as they then start to look to go, well, where do you get the growth? Fibre is clearly a great opportunity. The other element is to take a look at the altnets. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the altnets have passed around about 6 million homes. But the thing is, there's over 100 of them. Now, there are some that have become sort of household names if you live in an area served by those altnets. And the big ones really to call out are companies like Hyperoptic. Quite a neat business model, building to multiple dwelling units, something that's really been underserved by broadband networks in the UK. And they directly retail to their customers. So they're a full service operation and have learned the whole market and have targeted it accordingly. There are others that are doing equally well. I'd cite Community Fibre. Community Fibre in the UK has built nowhere near that number of customers, homes passed, but they do have 250,000 customers. They've built about 1 million homes. But what they've got is they've got about 25% of the homes passed are now turning into customers. So that is real customers paying money. So recall what I said about the banks. Banks don't loan money to do homes passed. Banks loan money to get money back. The value is in the customers. So if you're a retail operation, everything is within your control in order to drive that service through to get the revenue coming in. Now, whether it's profitable, there's whole sorts of equations that go in there, and whether you can survive in the market and keep building, there are lots of questions to be answered. But some of the bigger players have now become established. So Community Fibre doing well, Hyperoptic doing well, City Fibre, I'll call them out as well. So City Fibre is a wholesale operator, done well in signing up some of the other operators to provide their retail arms for them. And they built around about 2 million homes. So if these companies I talk about, then they've built then maybe 2/3 of that altnet market. But what about the other 100 then that are in there? The other 100 is scattergun all over the country. And this is really where, as we look forward, there will be an opportunity for consolidation and acquisition. And that's what I think will happen. Because even in those big companies, you take companies like City Fibre, which has secured a lot of investment from the banks and it's not about to go broke or anything anytime soon, but it is cash negative. All of those companies are cash negative, burning up to £100 million a year. So that's not sustainable in the current market. That is the challenge that the UK government's had of you can borrow money, but you need a plan that pays it back. And this is going to be the challenge of the next 2 years. So to keep going at this pace, it needs a bit of thought. Now, if you add up all the ambitious plans of the over 100 companies that are in this game, the 2 incumbents plus all the others, then what they're going to do is they're going to build to 55 million homes. The only thing is there's just over 29 million homes in the UK. So that means there's many people that are going to get 2 operators. And hidden in the safe's actually hidden inside this wooden box in the Bank of El Paso, but you'll see in the letterbox shaped part of it is a real picture of fibre delivered out in London Docklands. What you see there is you see 3 ONTs. So one from one of the altnets, one from Virgin Media, and another one from Openreach. Interestingly, each one of them burns about 11 watts. So if we think about that, that's like leaving. So if we're going to use one for our service, and we're going to keep the others on, because actually if we wanted to swap without having to send an engineer around in order to go configure it, so that the operator knows it's working, go, oh yeah, I can see the service to Simon's home is working. So I'll just be able to switch it on, just get Simon to just plug in the router into the right box. Well, actually, that's a bit of a problem, is it? Which one is the right box, particularly if I buy it from a retail brand that does not match the name on the box. And in the case of 2 of them in this flat in London, it's never going to match because 2 of them are wholesale operations. Openreach doesn't sell direct to consumers, and neither does the other altnet operator that's in the picture. Only Virgin Media O2 does. So if I place an order with Virgin Media, I'll know to plug it in that box. But the other ones, how do I know which one to plug it in? But how do they know whether it's going to work if it's not powered up? Because do I really want to, swapping my broadband contract, say once every 18 months or once every 3 years, do I really want to burn, the burning electricity of keeping those 2 on night and day? So it might only be just over 20 watts, but that's leaving 4 light bulbs on. So I say to those of you who are not at home, how many of you left all the lights on before you left home? Not many. So intriguing little thought there of, is that the right thing to do for a customer? Is that the right thing to do in terms of heading towards net zero and a carbon neutral economy? Is that the right thing of that's what the customer wants? I would argue that having competition in the market is a very useful thing. Infrastructure competition, having some is a good thing. Having competition that extends to over 100 doesn't. But just like in the mobile market, we've become used to what are the top brands. So those that actually have radio licenses. And that's true of wherever we go in the world. You'll find a few operators that have got radio licenses. And then you'll find others that provide virtual network operator services off it. Having more retail brands does make sense. But having more infrastructure, more masts, more fibres, it just does not make economic sense. Because every one of those homes passed is costing around about £400 to £600 at the moment. And that final 5%, getting at those really hard to reach customers and homes that are in our country, they're going to cost more like £2,000. So 5% is going to be £2,000 per home pass. And the bulk of them are going to be around about the 400 to 600 mark. Indeed, if you take the altnets as we go through this story, you're going to see that it's not the only cost, it's just digging up the road, putting something into someone's home. And it's those hidden costs which actually make the recovery of that money really, really difficult. A long time ago, I was taught an equation by Eric Laithwaite. He was one of the inventors of the linear motor, interestingly. He also got his stuff filmed in one of the films. So you'll see, if you look in Google, you'll find one of his demonstrations of a linear motor. You'll see it in one of the James Bond films from the 1970s. And what he did is he used a linear motor, and he got a silver tree tray, and he stuck it on top of what was a linear motor with two lovely teacups on it, and used it to fire it along and chop someone's head off. It was a dummy that he chopped the head off, but what he was really proving was this equation, and he used to write this on the chalkboard. He used to say, actually, the reason that you can make something that is heavier than air float by magnetic levitation and move it is because you need this equation. Goodness equals 1 over badness. So get rid of all the badness and all you get left is goodness. Now, there is, of course, a proper equation that sits on the bottom, which is quite a long one. From memory, I can't remember it now, but it does explain how you do that offset. And that's how linear motors work around the world. But the same is true here in fiber. What we need to do is get rid of the badness. And one of the badness elements is overbuilding too much. For some of those altnets, it's caught them by surprise, because what they did is they went and built where Openreach and Virgin Media hadn't built. Because from their perspective, it's acquiring a new customer. They haven't got the revenue. So it's not cannibalizing money that they've already got. It's genuinely new revenue coming in. So that gives you a faster payback. The only thing is that what it didn't recognize was it wouldn't take that long with people that are trying to build at 800,000 a quarter for them to arrive in the same place. Now you've got competition, and that will slow up the rate at which you get your money back. And that's why the acquisition rate on some of these networks, very patchy, take up very poor. And you can see we're going to end up with lots of stranded asset if it keeps going like this. So the correct thing to do, if I'm a bank, I think, is to pull the plug on some of them and actually get the best price I can get for it now before it becomes a fire sale. So we've got grabbing the money, and we've got a bit of the self-inflicted wounds that are going on. But let's take a little bit more of a deeper look about, well, what else do we need? Because particularly if I'm going to retail, as opposed to just wholesale, I need an access network hooked up. So those networks I built to the homes hooked up to a core and metro networks too, in order to connect to the internet. The content doesn't just live locally. When you look at things we might watch, and working for Sky is a company of connecting customers to more of what they love. And our customers love watching Netflix, they love watching Sky content, they love watching Amazon. And there's a little story on the screen, which is recent from ISP Review. And it talks about the latest traffic peak that has arrived. It's from the London Internet Exchange, and it talks about TalkTalk's latest peak, and it says, I'll read a little bit for you. It says, traffic reached a new record peak of 7.1 terabits per second just recently in October, when there were a couple of Premier League football matches on. And it says TalkTalk hit 9.1 terabits per second. I can tell you Sky hit 21.2. BT will have hit about 24, mainly because there's more customers. And in truth is, it's not just that was uniformly distributed over the UK or internationally in where that traffic was. It was highly concentrated because those matches, which were streamed in 4K, they were across what is the Liverpool-Manchester basin. So that was Man City and Liverpool playing that night. And when you get that, you get real regional hotspots. One little secret I can tell you actually is when you look at different supporters and you see how their brands have permeated around the world. Manchester United, who just got really a global brand, so beyond all of its troubles about how well is it doing, the disgruntled nature of its football players, and are its investors, they got their hearts in the right place. There's a little pocket of viewers that are avid Manchester United fans, and they live in South Wales. So in building a network, you've got to take account of where these big live events will really push the demands. It's not just about building one size fits all. So you imagine now you're one of those 100 operators building local networks. How is that going to scale up to be a national network? Because it's not cheap, and networks have to be designed so that you can handle peak traffic, so that you never slow customers down. So it's not all about infrastructure, and these are real pictures of all the different infrastructure companies that are out there building network. It is also about the operating model. So importantly, do I become a wholesaler or do I become a retailer? some of the smallest altnets have become retailers as well. They pay for all the costs. They sell locally. They sell at roughly what is a market price that's in there. Some of the deals are good relative to other services that might be available in that area. They appear competitive. But if I look at the broadband price overall, broadband price hasn't really moved for years. It's been pretty static. It's always been of, if there's an offer on, it's about 20 something pounds. And actually, when I go out of contract, it's 30 something pounds. As I push the speeds, it's more like it's 30 something pounds and it'll move to 40 something pounds, or it's 40 something and it moves to 50 something. Very little movement there. So actually, as speeds have gone up and we take advantage of these networks, then the price is not moving in the same direction. But if I want to do a retail model rather than a wholesale one, it's far more complex because I have to do what I show on the bottom of the screen. I've got to provide that full service capability. I've got to provide the capability of marketing, of sales, worrying about the sales dropout, those customers that change their mind or get frustrated with how long it's taking to put the service in. I get the challenges of activating it in a timely manner and making sure it works. That is surprisingly, if we went and bought, for example, a car today, so say we were able to get a new car, and I know there's difficulties in getting new cars, but if we turned up the garage and said, actually, I'm the salesman now, I'll talk to my audience who are my avid car buyers, but I'm shipping out 100 cars to you today. Only thing is, 4 or 5 of them, they're not going to work. Don't worry about that. I'll fix it in due course, but I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint customers today. That's not great quality, is it? But the challenge in all these networks is truly getting everything lined up end to end. So you can get things go wrong in that activation. It can be late, someone cannot turn up. Many people will have experienced those difficulties. And you can get those problems in early life that it doesn't meet your expectations. But once you've got through that, full fiber networks, when they go in live, the one true thing that we found over these last few years is the reliability is twice as good as running on a copper network. You can expect a reliability of getting a network fault that's more like once every 20 years. Now, if you think about moving home, on average across the UK, people move home once every 10 years. So in essence, in that home, you should never get a fault. If you've got a fault, you're the unlucky one. So in life, it's a great experience. But if you don't have a great experience, then you're more likely to churn. 2 reasons why you might churn. One is because of poor service. The other is prices have gone up, or I just got a better deal. It's a tricky one. Do I go into that full service model? So it gives me the best control, but I have to do a lot more work. I've got to build all that stuff. And every one of those components is exposed to the cost of poor quality. So engineering is not just about digging up the road and putting in physical things. It's about engineering the systems and the end-to-end process that it works well, particularly if I'm hooking across to a wholesale operation. So I'm a retailer. Now, what we find in the altnet market is a big part of it is wholesale only. In that wholesale market as well, what you find is a conscious choice has been made, and it's to have low automation. In the world that we live in today, we live in a world that is a digital world with high automation. In my own job in Sky, 5 years ago, we pioneered pushing customers towards self-service in broadband. We didn't make it compulsory, we made it a choice. And indeed, on the day that we launched it, we didn't make any noise about it at all. We waited for that first customer to come and use it. And a lady did. And the reason that she used it was on copper networks. But the reason she used it is because her son had called her at work. It was around about lunchtime. And in essence, the story goes, Mum, broadband doesn't work. He was studying for his exams. So it was pretty catastrophic. It caused her some anxiety. So we think about this world of being at work and of mental health, because instantly she thought, that's bad. What's he going to do? I could send him round to a friend's house and they'll do gaming for the afternoon and neither of them will study. And really, I need it fixed. But need it fixed, I'll have to go and ask my boss, can I have the day off work? Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. What will happen? Complete confusion. The first challenge that she had was actually looking up the phone number. And this is one of the interesting things about why she became the first digital customer in insurance. Because when she went to go look up the phone number, it's not easy to find phone numbers actually on the internet. So she logged into her account and saw there was a new magic button which said test my broadband. And she hit that button and it said, there's something wrong with your broadband. So would you like us to fix it? Find out what's wrong and fix it. So what it did is it then ran a series of tests and it said, yeah, it's broken. We'll be able to fix it tomorrow. You will not need to be at home for this and you will not be charged for it. The comfort piece that's there in the customer's mind. I don't need to speak to someone about this and don't need to have an argument. And she pressed that button and lo and behold, it got fixed the next day. The truth was someone working on some other service had broken the connection, but she wasn't worried about that at all. It was just that instantaneous journey of within 3 minutes with no training. So think about all the money companies spend on training up contact center advisors with no training through self-service. What she did is did a 3-step process and booked herself an engineer and got it fixed. In a world of fiber broadband where it goes wrong every 20 years, then isn't that magical? The whole thing just really needs to be digital. Customers still do call because there are people that do want to call. And of course, people who've got multiple problems is you do want to talk to them. So you must never have a service which doesn't ever talk to people. But even now, I could look to see how is my broadband performing at home. I could be anywhere in the world and do that and fix those problems anywhere in the world. But in building a full fiber model of doing this, it's going to be a highly reliable service. So the temptation is I won't build in automation. But actually that will stop scale and it will hold back growth. So that's what I tell you tonight is automation is key. And if you want a retailer that's running a big retailer that's running a big automated model is saying, oh, well, if it breaks, just drop us an email and then we'll have someone have a look at it. We've got people on standby 24 hours a day. They'll take a look at it. They'll run some tests and we'll get back to you. That is not a digital service. But you'll find in the altnet model, there's loads that have done it this way. And that is going to need to change. The service. And here we're going to start to look at the customer perspective. So does the customer just want reliability? Do they just want that once every 20 years? Is it that they just want speed? What do customers want? I say customers want 4 things. One is they want a decent price. And the problem is the price hasn't changed for many, many years. So those operators do have to keep investing in the network to carry more and more traffic without charging the customers more. So price competitiveness is we're still put in a pretty good place. There are other countries in Europe actually where price competitiveness is higher. The second part is when it goes into service, a 2-week wait's okay, maybe a 3-week wait, but 2 months, 3 months, not going to happen. So you've got to have a slick automated operation to get the customers in service. Then you also want to feel the speed, and that's a whole bit of puzzle we're going to explore. The need for speed, as Maverick said in Top Gun. And up the top of the screen, actually, you'll see these are the latest pulled yesterday of the Black Friday Friday offers in order to tell you about price. So you'll see offers there from Sky, from Virgin Media, from who else did I pick? Just at random. I think I picked Community Fibre there, and you'll see BT. BT this year got caught out a bit because they put the price back up to the standard price and it doesn't come off till tomorrow. So what they've been telling customers all week is go register for VIP access and we'll tell you tomorrow what the offers are going to be. But it's the last day and then they'll be in the game and everyone will be competing on price again. What a crazy world we live in. But I really wanted to talk about service innovation. So we're in an innovation building here in the University of East Anglia. During the lockdown, Sky built itself a new innovation centre. So in a world where everyone was going hybrid working, and there are real challenges of people coming back to work nowadays after the COVID era. But this is our new innovation centre. It's a giant building and it's all about innovation. We turned out some interesting things. So, I mean, not just Sky Glass. For those that follow cricket, the 100 series. The 100 series was invented at Sky with the English Cricket Board to try and encourage more participation in cricket, something that was always seen to be a sport for the privileged few. and also a sport that was very male dominated. But there's a belief of go and encourage women into these sports as well. And it has a really nice following now of mixed gender. But it's one of the things that was invented in Innovation Lab. But there's another thing that was invented there too. And I show on the screen what is the BT annual report of this year's the 2022 report. So I'll read a little bit from it for you. It says, and it's on the section that's in OpenReach. It says, importantly, 42 of our CP customers, that's communication provider, have already signed up to the Equinox pricing deal on our full fibre platform. So that is OpenReach's response to the AltNet world, to go, I'll give you a good deal if you stay with us, and I'll commit to building like crazy. In return, bring us the customers, please. That's what the Equinox deal is about. It's about a volume incentive deal. So it makes commercial sense. So I say BT and OpenReach in its strategy there is doing the right thing to encourage competition with being that incumbent provider. Virgin Media hasn't opened up its network in the UK yet in order to provide those services to other operators, still locked down as a retail model. Hyperoptic, still locked down as a retail only model. So we will see, I think, over the coming years, changes in that world of them opening up to stay competitive. But what does it say here? It says, full fibre platform. Then it also says this, and we continue to strengthen our CP relationships. For example, Sky's engineers can now connect their customers to our network directly. So it doesn't really sound revolutionary, but it is. So that world that used to exist many years ago, it had to be a post office engineer turned up in a yellow van or a green van for it and connected up. It's gone. It can now be, and I show one of the pictures of a hybrid transit van that's there, because we're not quite there of having full electric vans in Sky yet, partly because the weight they have to carry. And we talked about the vans going around the UK, building these networks. And this is a lot of carbon being chucked out here, but you can successfully have service engineers running hybrid vehicles today. Where I work on that campus out in West London in Austerley, the buses that hook up to the tube stations, they are all electric. So the electric world is coming, and we will see full electric vans. I just think we're not there yet. But what was that CP engineer about? Well, it was a bit of innovation. So if I take that full service model, what it was designed to do was tackle the activation and the early life step. Two problems. One is go do it quickly and do it on time. So do not turn up when the customer's not expecting you, or don't not turn up at all. And secondly, make sure it works. Now, how hard could that be? It's like, why does that require innovation? But it does. And it's an interesting thing when you follow the journey through. So I map out for you the journey. And on the right-hand side, I show you some of the techniques that we use in the Innovation Lab, and that is playing Lego. So honestly, is take a children's toy and use it to articulate what the problem is and get people to think outside the box to go, how do you solve this? And you will find the simplest things in order to solve it. Lego is an amazing tool. So if I follow the journey through about how do you make FTTP happen in a customer's home, firstly, as a provider, you agree to sale. Then in this new piece of magic, you align the installation appointments. You look it up to go, okay, when will it be built and ready? And there's a trick here, which is don't build the whole thing into the home, build it to the outside of the home. So it's already down the street. But what I need to do is that extra bit of cost that gets it to the front of your home. That's not economic to just go digging up people's gardens or running new lines to the top of their house. So what we do is we place an OpenReach, we look at the appointments and go, oh yes, OpenReach Sally could do it there. And we've also got an engineer available on that day. I'll knock it off the inventory. So it's like a retail model of running a supermarket. I'll just say, okay, I've reserved that tin of beans to be sold on that day so that I don't oversell it. You could say, well, that's like running a hotel or running an airline. Yep, and it's that easy. So you reserve it. Then you place the OpenReach order. OpenReach then go away and build from the curb to the wall. Now, actually, that's far more efficient to do. So building to the wall, the customer does not need to be at home. Sometimes they do because it's a gated development, you can't get in and problems like that. So it's not universally, it doesn't work universally. But for most homes across the UK, you can go and build to the outside and the wire will just appear, that new fibre will appear exactly where the copper wires appear. And those unappointed tasks are more efficient. So if you're a construction company, why does OpenReach like that? Is because you can get far more done. So not only can you be building down the street, you can now be enabling it as far as the home and quickly. Now, at that point, what they normally do is either issue the work out to their own workforce or issue it out to contract. And the unique thing that we've done at Sky, but others are looking at it, is to say, okay, we'll be the contractor. So all that's going on here is we're contracting for our own work. So OpenReach are paying us the money back to go and finish the job. So it's as simple as OpenReach give us the contract job. We match the appointment up, and how easy is that? And so you do have to keep all the appointments in step if it's moving home and people have moved the dates about, but otherwise just keep it in step. But because we're the ones that are talking to the customer, what you then get is you constantly keep that aligned. So if the customer needs to move it to the next day, if we've got an engineer next day, we'll do it the next day. It's not go to the bottom of the pile and wait another 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's whenever you want it. So you match the appointment up, you send the engineer out, and importantly, by doing this, the missed appointment rate is lower. That customer disappointment of, I didn't get it when you promised it in 2 weeks' time, it goes away. So it is much better. And all the engineer then has to do is pick up the piece of fibre that's sitting outside the house, check the lights there, drill a hole in the wall from the inside out so that they don't drill through your electric cables and they don't make a big hole in the plaster. And importantly, the person that's now turning up, they're a technician. They're not someone that's been working outside with muddy boots. They're a person that is there to work inside your home. And the people that we send are the TV engineers. So I started off by talking about Sky Glass. Sky Glass has now been in the UK for over a year. And it's a TV with streaming built into it. So it's Sky with streaming. So the world of the satellite is gradually going to disappear. So we've got thousands of TV engineers. Now, set against the back, go, okay, company's changed its mind and go, actually, it's going to do streaming now. So there's no satellite. And it's not quite like that satellite's going to be with us still for many, many, many years. But as we transition to streaming, you could say, well, surely then there will be lower demand for satellite engineers. In the long term, that will be true. In the short term, that would be disastrous. If you told all your engineering workforce, go, oh, well, actually, the company's plan, and you can see it, of doing streaming services is not to have satellite anymore. So you either stay until there's no demand for you, or you learn new skills. What this does is it gives them new skills that will last for the next 100 years for their careers. So this is taking engineers and say you retrain them and they become fibre engineers, and they love it. They really do. That skill of so they already knew how to drill a hole in the wall. But working with glass fibre and jointing it and splicing it and connecting it up, those were the new skills. That bit of go inside the customer's home, making sure that you don't pull all the plaster off, making sure it's really neat, leaving it neat and tidy. It was second nature to them. So it was an obvious thing to do. And it's really nice to see, actually, that keeps the whole community together to go, there's a real demand for engineers in this country. So you drill the hole in the wall, the engineer then pops the optical network terminator on the end of it. So what is a fibre modem, in essence, to convert it to the broadband signals. And now they plug in the router, because when you plug in a router for the first time, the first thing it does is to go, I'll tell you what, I better make sure my software's up to date. So it will go off to a server and go, I better go down and download the new software. That will take about 3 to 5 minutes, and then it will go off and back on. The technique of plugging it instantly when you put it together is as soon as the service comes up, it will start doing that work. And it's now the engineer goes and cleans up. So you don't clean up and then test it and plug it in. You do it in reverse. You trust that your work has been done to a good standard. And that's what they're trained to do. Because if you do that, you save that 5 minutes. Because far better to use that 5 minutes to make sure it absolutely works, the customer completely understands it, and it's plugged in the right place. How easy is that? But what you then get is that test and demonstrate the failure rate is much lower. So no longer going to the garage and getting that disappointment that it doesn't work. Sorry, your car that I've got for you today, you're the unlucky customer. You've got the Friday afternoon one that was badly built. None of that. You've got a consistent process. And that is the magic of what we've done in service innovation. And that's one of the tricks to get a few dollars more. And it's publicly available, and all the operators in the market can go take a look at it. And it can be deployed anywhere in the world. But what a change in thinking to say the operator must do all the work, to say, actually, you can share the work. Now, feel the speed. This is really the tricky one. In field of speed, you get what you measure, really. So the reality is, if I go get my iPhone out here and connect up to the Wi-Fi and test whatever, I don't know what it will read. It might read like 50 meg or something on one of these fiber connections to the home. It's going to read a decent speed until it reaches the point where over the Wi-Fi, then the phone won't go that fast. So if I get my aging iPhone XS out, the best it's going to do is about 530 megabits per second I've had out of it. So if I bought a 1 gigabit per second connection, I'm not going to feel it. I'm not going to see it. But a 1 gigabit per second connection is not about that individual device approving it out. It's about sharing those services so that all the people in the home can do everything they want. It's so that someone can watch that Manchester City match or that Liverpool match on the 80-inch 4K screen and get the perfect picture, which interestingly only takes about 21 megabits per second. So out of a gig connection, 21 megabits per second, tiny. So you can imagine what's going on in a network when I said there's over 22 terabits per second running. How many people are really watching stuff? But then, of course, in the home, not everyone's going to be watching the match. Someone else is going to be watching Netflix on top. And that's in a film, well, actually, maybe it's running at about 14, 15 meg. Okay, I still only need about 35. It's hard to imagine today what the use cases might be to go, I want it to run up to a gigabit per second. But for those that want the best, the 1 gigabit speeds are typically about where things are now, but it's not going to hold there. It is going to go through 2 gigabits per second, and we see it in some countries already, and it is going to go to 10 gigabits per second. In the world of online gaming and very low latency, it's king. And so you do see the benefits of in full fiber networks of low latency. So it's not just about the headline speed of does it go at 500 megabits per second on my iPhone. It's actually, does the games console go really, really fast too? So you may say, oh, actually, to get the best, I need the cable to plug it in. And that is one of the techniques. The thing about measuring speed, though, and I published here what is Ofcom's latest speed results. So Ofcom has a panel of consumers. Alongside, they take input from the different operators on what are the median speeds that are used every day. And these speeds must also be used for advertising. So when you see those headline adverts to say the speed you get off this service, for example, is 500 megabits per second or 1 gigabit per second, that is done by measurement. It must be underpinned by measurement. So how do they measure it? How do we measure it? Well, what you do is you just get a file and you pop it on a server, prescriptive file. And what you're doing is you're sending that down to the gateway device in the home, to the router. So through your own network, through an access network, down to either a piece of software that sits in your router or to a separate measurement box. And there are a number of companies that provide that sort of service. So the server is off net, so it's representative of it's somewhere in the internet, you're watching something. And what it's doing is sending the data down, not a huge amount of data, something on these fiber networks, it'll only run for about 5 seconds. So it's a real burst of data. If we were to look at the parallel thing of what's it like, it's actually a bit like running gaming. It's about stressing a network to go, what's it really like? And those tests run when nothing else is running. So they deliberately look for a quiet period, nothing else going on. We're just going to blat this thing with data now and go measure it. But the tricky part when you send it down is in blasting the data down is something else might start up during the 5 seconds when you're using it. And so you can get that. But equally, other things can slow it down. You'll find as much internet chatter on the concepts of traffic policing and traffic shaping. Do you shape traffic and do you police traffic? There's always been a demand on networks to prioritize telephony traffic to make sure it always gets through. And that's true today. So as we move through emergency services of also relying on our mobile phones, it's still very important that that phone call, if you need an ambulance or you need the fire engine or you need the police, it's going to connect, it gets through. So you prioritize the voice traffic. But in doing that, that eats such a tiny part of, for example, a 1 gig connection. This is a few kilobits per second. It's nothing. So what do you do with the rest of the bandwidth? Well, it's competing. So in sending that, do I do any form of prioritization in it? And then how do I police it? When you're an operator, the first thing that you sort of do in your network is make sure you're not going to overload the weakest points downstream. So what you do is you do a bit of traffic policing. And you can do traffic shaping to the extent of prioritizing that telephony traffic, but whilst you can do different policies of how you run it, in truth is you don't need to do that much more. What you really got to do is pump that data down really quick. And once it's got to the other end, you start pumping it back the other way, and that's how you measure the two speeds. But in doing that, of course, you do get weak spots. One of the observations is when you think about that box in your home that on a copper network used to be a little plastic socket, but now is a modem. It's not a very big box. So what's inside it? Well, actually, it's got a little processor in it, a little memory. So that is one of the bottlenecks that you get there. Pump data too fast into it, and what you'll find is it will start dropping the packets and it will slow you down. So you can push it too far. The other element in routers is we see router technology. We're just seeing the next generation of routers come out. And we see in the UK, Vodafone's been first mover with a super duper new router that does the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. That's great expansion of the capacity. So I relieve some of the congestion and problems that you get in Wi-Fi. But importantly, or possibly more importantly, uses a thing called Wi-Fi 6, and that is the sharing of the bands in order to get the best out of the spectrum that's there, particularly if your home is pretty close to other homes and you're picking up their Wi-Fi signals as well. So it makes the best of what you've got. And that is a premium router. It's the same base router that Sky's parent company, Comcast, same sort of Technicolor router as Comcast uses on its cable network. But it's the first mover in the UK into the next generation of routers that will go fast. But most routers now date 3 or 4 years old. So it's a bit like having a computer that's 3 or 4 years old. Is they've got good life in them, they do the job. But if you look forward, there will have to be a new generation when speeds go up above one gigabit per second. And these are the actual speed results of what Ofcom measures. So actually up the top, you'll see TalkTalk's one of its 500 megabits per second service. So Ofcom say it actually goes at 450 megabits per second. It's an interesting conundrum. That is, it's like, how could it be a 500 meg service that only goes at 450? And I will make no comment on that. In truth of working in the industry, I'm not sitting in a glass house and throwing stones. It's an observation. It's the only one of the 500 services that you see published by Ofcom. So others have got 500 services. I've got 500 services in Sky, and many others do too. But it's Ofcom normalised the data for what is the take up across the UK. So it's just what is published based on last March. We'll see here that there were no 1 gigabit per second or 900 megabits is what we see it advertised at. FTTP, fiber to the home services or fiber to the premises services. And that's because the take up just is not enough yet to be representative. What we see is far more about copper services and the lower speed fiber services. When we start to go down, we see, 300 meg services goes at 300 meg. The 150 or the 145 services, so TalkTalk called it slightly higher. The 150 service goes at 155, the Sky one goes, the 145 goes at 150, the BT 145 goes at 146. Well, so they do what they say. So as a headline, these FTTP networks broadly do what they say. There may be something going on in Ofcom's measurement of that 500 service back in March, whether that's a particular issue that was at the time or whatever, we don't know. This is just published results. So it's not, don't go and not buy TalkTalk service. There's no reason to believe anything fundamentally is sort of wrong there, but it's just odd in that data. If we then go and look at the Virgin Media service, so Virgin Media sell a 1.1 gigabit per second service. Now this one's really interesting because the router on that similar sort of age. It's got 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi on it, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi on it. And I said my iPhone on Wi-Fi, well, that will only go 550. If I get a better iPhone, if I trade it up now to a 40, I might get it to go just under about 700. That'll be top. theoretically 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi will work at around about 1.3 gigabits per second. But I've never seen a device get anywhere close to it. So using that 1.1 gigabit per second version, which does measure 1137. So it does do what it says on the tin. And these measurements are done at peak times. So this is the evening peak between 8 and 10 p.m. when many say networks slow down. There's some form of contention or congestion. This is Ofcom being the independent arbiter of raw speed. It is doing it, but in customer being able to use that raw speed is not going to work. If I look on the back of the router, and the router that I pick is a Virgin router, you'll see there's 4 yellow ports on it. Those are the Ethernet ports. They'll work, they're gigabit Ethernet ports, so they'll work at a speed of up to real data 940 megabits per second. So if I go and get my iMac and I get the Thunderbolt connector and I plug that in, I should be able to read 940, but I won't read 1.1. So what is the 1.1 service all about, or these higher speeds? It's about having sufficient capacity that no matter what you want to do of multiple users in the home, it doesn't slow you down. That's what feeling the speed is about. Lots of engineers and lots of people are fixated on measuring raw speed, but I say to you, actually, it's not everything. And when you run that speed test on a MacBook, the iPad, the iPhone, your Samsung phone, doesn't really matter what it is. It's a point in time measurement. It's not really feeling the speed. It's not what Maverick said in the Top Gun film. And in essence, the world of speed is you get what you measure, but there's a whole challenge here of customer education. Customers don't get speed. So if we come to view things, we come to the final scene. So we can see in here, there's a bit of embracing uneasy partnerships. It was an interesting journey doing innovation work to say, actually, we'd like to contract for our own work to go put it in. It's not an easy thing to have that conversation between two very big businesses, but I'm really pleased to have seen that in the BT annual report to say, actually, it's one of the successes of BT during the year. That's a huge change for a big incumbent supplier to say, actually, I'm open and to new ideas, which actually helps take this industry forward. So not just of like great innovation that's happened over 100 years through the evolution of telecoms in the UK, it's being open to new ideas. And that's what I think we'll have to see in the altnet market going forward to avoid all those fire sales. Secondly, beware the twists and turns. So we've seen how it's very easy to get into a state of lots of overbuilding. And I don't think any of us wants to have 3 ONTs in the home. Or say you move into a new home and you see all these clatter boxes, it's using up all the power sockets, it's got messy wires, and you do not want to be burning an extra 20 watts or 40 watts per year. What is the point of that? And you do need to be prepared to disrupt. So in a way, I talked about a bit of the disruption of saying, okay, we would like to contract to our own work. We had to convince the whole of the industry to go with it, because theoretically you say, well, does that give you a competitive advantage? I think it's just embracing a new concept and idea, and it's something that can be copied. Innovation can be copied. Innovation is different from invention. Invention is coming up with something completely new. What I described doesn't actually sound that new, but it is innovation because it's about making it real. And that's what is at the heart of being a good engineer. And equally, don't be fooled by illusions. And that is my tale of speed. So there are definitely some illusions going in there. And I haven't got all the answers today. I don't believe the regulators have got all the answers too. And I don't believe customers really understand speed. So I say, don't be fooled by the illusions. But maybe that's where we need some innovation next. So there are a few more to be found in full fibre broadband. And that takes us to questions.
Thank you very much. I think we've got far too many questions to get through, cool. Simon, because they've been coming in on the web, but we'll give it a go. We'll take one on the webinar and then one from the audience, if we do it that way. So the first question I picked out here was, do you think the nascent LEO satellite internet systems will have much impact on the broadband market?
I think they'll have little impact, Ian, in truth. when you look at the cost of running satellite services, it's really expensive. So beyond the actual technical challenges about the delays of sending things up into space and bringing them back down again. So particularly if I'm like an online gamer, and I talked about low latency on FTTP network, looking to have latencies below 10 milliseconds. The best of those games consoles and online gaming and the resolution of great screens now that's the way it's going, is satellite services. It's not going to cut it. It is a niche that's there in order to provide coverage. So that's the important thing. It's got a place to pay, but it's about coverage. It's not about the general mainstream market.
Excellent, thank you. Question from the audience, from anyone?
Nicholas Clark from BT. So quite glad to see you join your partnership with Openreach.
Yep.
Coming back to the earlier part of your talk, when you talk about the altnets and the overbuild, yep, and robbing the bank.
Yep.
Over at Sky, it seems like you're taking the position of sit back, you're going to watch, see what happens with the market, let everyone else take the risks, make mistakes. You're innovating with your Sky Glass and interaction with the CP. So is that likely to continue for the next few years?
That's a really interesting question, Nick. I'm not sure I can directly answer it. I don't want to be a politician and change the question to something. I think actually when you look at it from outside the company, and you see in my career I've worked through many different companies. It's been real interesting working inside what is a big media company. A big media company does have a different outlook to being a pure telecoms company. In what we do, Sky got in the telecoms market back in around about 2008 by acquiring a company called EasyNet. To get into it as a defensive play when cable and Virgin Media was sort of still in its ascendancy, that's there, that thought, you need a telecoms market. But it's become a business in its own right, and it is of course a profitable business, as telecoms companies are. So whilst I talked about pricing being tight, then yes, margins are tight in the telecoms market, particularly when you don't see prices rising in line with inflation each year. Although I'm sure as we look through this difficult period, we will see price rises continue. And we saw price rises last year. So this is hurting in customers, and it's led to things like introduction of social tariffs and how you protect the poor. But in terms of strategy, when you look at it, is Sky at its heart is a media company, and has really pushed, including in doing far more, making our own content in the UK. So we've just built studios out at Elstree, one of the homes of filmmaking in the UK. So there's a real investment in content, and you'd expect that from having a parent company, Comcast, of who owns Universal Studios. So there's a lot of emphasis on being a media company. In the telecom space is you'd say we are number two. Do we have aspirations of being number one of BT? Of course we do. It's when you look at any market, number two always has its sights on number one. So I suppose my short answer, Nick, is Sky's always got its sights on being number one. The question of what does it do, how does it pounce? I suppose at liberty, or if I really think about it, I don't know what's going to be the piece of magic, but I do know that what you get is by doing everything well, then that actually positions you to be the best. Sky is the best. If you look at Ofcom complaints, the data's just come out. Sky is number one for broadband, number one for telephony, number one for mobile, and number one for TV services. The best customer service measured by complaints. So I put a healthy one on that, of course, but in the least number of complaints across the whole industry, not by a little bit, by a long way. So the industry, or the telecoms industry, has got a lot to do in service, and I would encourage the whole industry and engineers to work towards that. It's a lot of incremental things. And those big questions to go, how do you get to be number one? I think you get to be number one by hard work. You don't get to do it by acquisition. I don't think you get to do it by mopping up all the altnets, for example, as a personal opinion. Is there room in this market to have 3 or 4 big players? Absolutely. And I think that's very healthy competition, and long may that continue. But 100 or so, no. Sky, could it be number one? Maybe one day.
Okay, thanks, Simon. There's a question off the internet here from Tomo that asks, should Ofcom be influencing the infrastructure providers by discouraging overbuilding and getting those building out in dense urban areas to contribute more to the cost of getting fibre to the rural areas?
That's a really good question that's there. So before we hit the financial crisis, the government committed to go spend £5 billion to infill of what were the rural areas. And it's always been that correlation. I talked about cost per home pass being so much higher in that area. And in truth, very little of that money has actually made its way out into the build. And as I look at the challenges of the government today, then I see very little of that money moving. I think that's one of the casualties of the latest financial crisis. So can Ofcom do anything to socially engineer the market? I don't think so. I think it would be the wrong action for Ofcom to take to try and socially engineer it. I think the challenge is it will need government support to do it. I think it will be slower to do it. But it's a bit like we see pretty much most places can get fibre to the cabinet style services today, or the equivalent cable, but the coverage is pretty good, and there are localized places where it's really difficult to reach, and there does need to be some form of subsidy. I think what works better is that individual subsidy, is that local community or that local home of that clubbing together to a scheme to convince someone to pay for it, rather than try and do mass scale social engineering. I think those days, particularly when we look at like the government tackling the policies, I suppose, of the last 10, 20 years, of we've enjoyed low inflation and we've enjoyed a very stable economy. Some would say actually we could have enjoyed higher growth. But in terms of where we are today, I don't think this is the time to be intervening in that way. I think more it's the survival of those alt nets and the challenges of interconnecting their biggest problem, that they don't end up in fire sales. The banks that have put the money in, very, very exposed today.
Okay, thanks for an interesting view. Okay, and any other questions from the audience here? Okay, well, I'll give you time to think. We'll move on. There's a couple of questions around service, particularly because of power cuts. So I see that other colleagues have written no power at home, no voice service, no power, no VoIP in respect of FTTP. What solutions are service providers looking at to provide additional service resilience for vulnerable customers who own a phone line?
So this is one of the big challenges of what's coming up, is not just of us in the UK and other areas as well, is will there be power cuts through this winter, or indeed into next winter? There's so much uncertainty in the world. The principle of these networks is that you do need power. And they've been built without battery backup. Now, the simplest thing you can do is have that provision of battery backup in order to work. It's not just of the vulnerable people. Actually, you think of the companies themselves. So think of all those contact center staff that aren't just necessarily working in contact centers today. They're doing hybrid working and working from home. If there's a power cut down their street, they need to go to work that day, not be at home. It's another bit of hidden in the power cut world. So the power cut is going to go off, and there's nothing magic that can be done. Yes, you can provide mobile services out to those customers, or mobile dongles to get the broadband going. It's a second-rate choice, but in truth is not enough. Plus, when the power goes off, the batteries on the mobile networks on the mast, they're going to last 4 hours. So if the power cut's 3 hours, it's going to hold up. But the more the mobile network's used in that area, then the faster the battery's going to go down. So the reality of what we're going to see is we are going to see some of the mobile network collapse as well, as it goes towards, like, if we do see 3-hour power cuts. So there's no magic button. I think the vulnerable customers, as much as possibly done with solutions of battery backup, of loan mobiles, of topping up where they've got mobile contracts, where you're giving them a mobile contract, you can give them free data and give them 3 minutes. You can do all these things to help, but there's no silver bullet in this. We're going to be in for some tough times if we get power cuts, and could be likely, could be coming.
Yeah, big test coming up.
This is a big test for us.
Yeah. Any question now from the audience? Otherwise, I'll move.
Just an observation on that. I think, was it Ebbsfleet, where they built a new housing estate and they put in the cupboard under the stairs or whatever. They put UPS it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because there was the cable TV or whatever had to be delivered through that. It had to have battery backup. Phones delivered through that. It had to have battery backup. So they ended up with massive pack of batteries underneath the stairs, which,
Just,
long term,
can I just say, just for the folk who are on the webinar, they probably wouldn't have heard that comment.
I'll
Yeah.
repeat it, Ian. So the point that's being made is one of the early deployments of fibre to the home in the UK was down in Ebbsfleet of new housing estates. That's down towards the Dartford area, for those who aren't familiar with it, just south of the river in Kent. And what was done in those homes, we put in large battery backup UPS style solutions. So it would power broadband, it would power phone, power devices. Because remember, for telephony, most customers nowadays have a cordless handset. That base station does require power in order to work. For the solutions where it's on fibre to the home, you've got that extra complication, particularly for the vulnerable that have care alarms, for example. So not all care alarms will work with traditional telephone services moved across onto fibre and the VoIP services. And some have had to be converted, that they signal back to contact centres via broadband, and they've got their own technique of running a VoIP service to talk to these people that need help. But they still then rely on battery backup. So yes, in each individual unit, you can put a battery and you could chip batteries out. I don't think there are enough batteries there. So the more strategic solutions are, if we look at what's happening of things like solar panels and the battery solutions that go with them in people's homes, that is a very practical solution about what is the evolution of the home. That is the best way to go. Panels on the roof, big battery for your home, including electric cars. The principle of there's energy in the car, back feed it into your home in order to generate power. I think actually personally, I'm prepared for it. So my power at home, I've got a little switch, and I do have a 2 kilowatt generator, which will just fire up. And I've got around about 25 litres of petrol at home. So as long as I get the petrol, it costs 3 times as much as running it off the mains. But hey, I think I'll be okay.
Great, thank you for that. There's a question here from Steve, who's obviously worrying about his investments, because he asks, you mentioned the likelihood of consolidation of altnets. Do you think there are any obvious candidate companies that will be the consolidators, and when will it start?
I think it's already started, actually, in truth. So if you look in the market and you look at what some of the investment analysts and some of the bits of due diligence that are going on, is that the sales already started. So it's on now. When we look at previous bubbles, so take a look back at the tech bubble, some of the other bubbles that have occurred in Bitcoin and what's happened in the markets, is there is an opportunity to get out now if you can. So personal view there, but I think I get out. If I'm exposed in that market, I'm not sure I want to be there.
I think that's a great answer. Thank you, Simon. Hope Steve was still listening.
Yeah, Steve, and I'm not a regulated financial advisor, I'm not qualified to give advice. And the 4,000 lines small print that we all read in those ads, the magic radio ad. But no, it's genuinely, I think when you think about it, this is a tough place to be an investor in that market.
Just following on that theme, let's say an altnet fails. What should we do about the customers on that altnet? Should their fibre network be preserved and run by another company to consume it, or should the customers be put onto Sky or BT or sort of etc.?
Can you just summarise?
I'll summarise that. So this is a really good question. So say one of those altnets fails, what should we do with those customers? So is this like the energy markets, that where there's a supplier of last resort, or should the customers be distributed? I actually think there's been some success in what's happened in the energy market of not of what the regulator did. So I'm not a fan of the regulator of how the energy market has been regulated, but in terms of some of the outcomes of what's happened. So whether the individual cases in the sale of the energy companies that have gone broke, and it was all too easy for people to set those up in a garage and go, oh, hi, I'm an energy company, I haven't got any money, I'll sell electricity cheap, take all your money, and then actually I can't afford to buy it, so I've gone broke, but I've had a nice life. This isn't quite like that. They have built infrastructure in the ground, and part of the question is, well, what should we do with the infrastructure? I think the infrastructure should be taken over and used because it is an asset in the ground. And in truth is, I think it should be, the customers should be picked up by a supplier of last resort, including any necessary working out of a subsidy, how that's paid for. If we were to look and go, what should Ofcom do? I think Ofcom should take a look at that question very seriously to say, how does it manage this situation that's got created in the event this occurs? And the asset should be reused. By and large, that is money spent. The biggest part of the cost was digging up the ground, putting that asset in. It might not fit to some standards and it might require rework in order for it to be usable by the different infrastructure providers. And that needs to be factored into the due diligence of taking it over. But should we just say, oh, well, someone built that, let's abandon it? I think the answer to that's no. And I think it's a good question that really Ofcom, maybe someone in the audience is listening, should take a look at. I think it would be a really worthwhile study. Very good point.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Any thoughts, questions? Kevin first.
Yes, that's great talk, really entertaining. Thank you very much. Just we talked a bit about innovation and invention. If you were to put your crystal ball, gazing into a crystal ball, what's the future for FTTP? Is the fibre that's gone into the network going to be capable of even higher and higher speeds, or are there new fibre networks, or what, if we were to have the conversation, a presentation in 20 years' time, what's your view of where broadband will be?
Summarize it. So the question is, what's my view of what will things be like in 20 years? So all that fibre that's gone into the ground, will it still be in use in 20 years, or does it need to be relayed? When you look at the lifetime of fibre optic itself, mainly because the plastics that go around the glass fibre, it does have a finite life. So as we look forward and say, have we built an infrastructure in this country that is going to be fit for the next 100 years? The answer to that is no, it will have to be replaced. So just as we look at the electricity and national grid, if you take a look around the country, you'll find that right about once every 7 years, they're taking down the cables on those big pylons. So we don't obviously notice it, but I'm sure all of you will now. They take the cables down and they put the cables back up. So in 20 years' time, it is likely we're going to start to see some replacement. But does it have a good life of 20 years? Absolutely, it does. The tech that's sitting on the end of it, will it evolve over this next 20 years? Absolutely. And the signs are there now that that's what's going on. So are those networks capable of 10 gig? They are. I mean, indeed, in the labs, you could take the whole of the internet traffic today and push it down one piece of fiber by separating the colors of light. So will we see more down these sorts of networks with the colors of light? Absolutely, we will with that tech. Will we see a fundamental need to re-engineer it? Not immediately. One of the UK things that's important is if you look across the UK, it's about 5,500 telephone exchanges now. Over the next decade, that's going to reduce down to about 3,000. But if you model out where could it go, it could go much lower. So it could go to 1/10 of that. It could even go to maybe 1/30 of it, down to about 100 in the UK. Giant buildings, so like these big data centers that are there. That would be a big structural engineering. Maybe in 50 years, we'll see that. In the next 20 years, I don't see it. Partly because you take these buildings or these bits of land sites where people have built these points of presence, where you look at the altnets, you're going to spot the altnets now because you're going to see some of these nice big ugly cabinets which have got electronics housed in them, and you go, that looks really horrible. People have always thought, I don't want one of those BT green cabinets outside my house, or I don't want a telegraph pole. I'll tell you, you do not want one of these big things which has got optical line terminators and Ethernet switches in them. They're not exactly pretty. Where they're tucked in an industrial area, fine. So we're going to see a bit of consolidation of that world in terms of the cabinets and where things are placed. And I think we'll see over time a move to, just like we've seen cloud-based data services, which really are giant data centers, we'll see more consolidation back again. Will it ever get below 100? When I've modeled it in the past, I've never seen it go below about 80, and you sort of look at it and go, well, what's the value of the land? It doesn't make sense, and do you do it that way? And what's the vulnerability if you put all of that power in one area? Could be pretty big, actually. Yes, you can put diverse routes, but it's the putting all your eggs in one basket. So the next 20 years, I think we're going to see evolution. The tech's going to get upgraded at some point in it, taking more advantage of the different colors of light. Then, as we look in the 20 to 40 year time frame, we're going to start to see evolution into what is the next generation of it.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is take one last question off the off the webinar, and then we'll leave it to the audience. So there's a practical question here, Simon. It says, how do you build from the street to the house when you have a concrete paved frontage? Could I not get an answer? Oh, I could not get an answer out of BT or TalkTalk because I couldn't contact them. That was from Darren.
Right. So the answer is you've got to dig it up with the minimum intervention possible. So that's the truth of it. It is possible in some cases to have the cables overground. And it is possible to go, oh, I can go around or I can put it overhead. That is the other way of doing it. To say, actually, for many years now, since the 1980s, there's been a reluctance to go put up new poles. But the simplest thing is, if you really don't want to dig it, is put it up in the air. Actually, my CTO, and I'm sure she wouldn't, group CTO, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying it, actually, of her own home of moving in, had exactly that problem of it being redeveloped with a beautiful block paving out the front, and in that process, it used to have a cable that was in there that was directing ground, and unfortunately, the people that did the block paving thought, well, that's of no use anymore, dig it all up. She does now have full fibre network from Sky, of course, and the cable is neatly tacked along the wall. So it's instant tubing. So it's the tubing that can also be used. So very small tubing. It's attached to the garden wall at low level and then comes into the house. So there are innovative techniques that can be used rather than just dig it up. So if you've got a solid wall, and you own the wall, so that's the other important part because you're fixing it to a structure that's there. If there's a route to get it just inside the boundary of your property safely underground, it can be brought up and then brought overground, or it can be brought up onto a pole and then brought in overhead. The other alternative is dig it up. Yes, it will leave a scar. It does look unsightly. It's never going to look exactly the same, but there are techniques you can disguise it so you can get concrete paint over the top of it to give you a different finish. That's there. So it's not the be all and end all. If you want fibre broadband, go get it. But it will take a bit of work with the people that are putting it in. And you may have to contract bits of it yourself in order to get it as you want it of your house.
Okay, I think probably we need to call that an evening, but thank you so much for doing a thoroughly informative and entertaining talk again, Simon. So thank you for coming to Ipswich, braving the Ipswich traffic, I have to say, and doing that talk. And I'd like for everybody in the audience to thank Simon in the normal way. Thank you. Right.